Outdoor Adventures with North America's Dean of Outdoor Sportsmen, Red Fisher.
Hi friends, I'm Red Fisher here at Camp Cataraqui, and I'm showing a few fancy casts to these Sea Scouts that are here with me because they want to hear me tell another adventure in our outdoors. You folks will enjoy that story too right after these messages from our sponsors. So come back and we'll tell you and these boys that message. Well, friends, some of these Sea Scouts are from Bryanston and the others are from Bell River. And of course, being Sea Scouts, that's why we're down here on the water. And I'm going to tell them a story. I'm going to tell you guys a story about George Armstrong. You know, George Armstrong used to be the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, you know. And he wanted to go into Quebec and fish for speckled trout. And we wound up on this Rogaan River. And I'm telling you, when we hit the speckled trout on this river, one after another, we just caught it like that. Even the cameraman was catching them. One of the best stories I ever had, and of course the chief, he's crazy anyways, you know, that guy. So why don't you just stay around and let us tell the story the way George Armstrong and I told it when we were sitting in my old lodge and just living that tremendous fishing trip over again.
This is the Rogaan River Fish Camp where George and I landed as soon as we found out we were going to go. That was sometime at the end of August, wasn't it?
It was the latter part of August and the 1st September, and this is at the cabin where the girls are.
You made out like a bandit with them. They would give you triples on everything, pie and everything else.
Yeah, well, if we Indians don't look after their own, who's going to look after them?
Yeah, but then I go up there and we're right back to the cops and robber days. That was good food, wasn't it, though?
Well,
now, that was, remember, that was char.
That was char that day.
Yeah.
That's right, because they had that there when we got there.
From the fish camp on the ocean, right. But did that ever taste good?
That's my first feed of char, really. Outside of some smoked char, it's my first feed of freshly fried char, and it was a great thrill for me.
Well, that was a thrill. But when we got on that boat and you were asking all the questions and this and that, and you were waving to those gulls that were flying by there even.
Well, I was just happy to be there. I'd wave at anything that day, right?
I guess this was your first. We stopped when the guide, what was Peter?
Peter was the guy.
Yeah,
yes,
and he
yes.
said, try lake trout, try lake trout. You made one cast, I think 2 casts, and you had one on already.
Yeah, and this is spinning equipment too, you know, that we were casting for lake trout, and it didn't go very deep, if you remember. And we caught a small one. We didn't catch a very large one. But
I'll bet you there's some big ones in that lake.
But this one has got to be in about 4 feet of water. We caught this one, I think. It was only down about 4 feet.
Oh, yeah, but this, you know, that time of the year, they're coming up. It's a deep lake.
Yes, but it was a thrill for me. That's my first lake trout I ever caught in my life also.
Yeah.
And
well,
I had a little bit of trouble with him for a while, but...
well, you know, when the camera gets up like that, he's a lot bigger than he really is. Although that's a good eating size, believe me, that's good eating size. But of course, this wasn't the deal. This was just on the way.
Yeah, this is just we just stopped.
Now we're heading out for the rapids. We're going to cut across and portage over to the rapids, and that was beautiful walking through there that time of the year.
You know, this is a trail. We at the top of the rapids, and then we had to take the trail down to the bottom, and it was a nice part of the country, no question of that.
You know what? We don't often like to think of when guys like yourself, George, and some of the other guys that have gone on these trips, just before you make that first cast, what do you really think about? You more or less forget all the other stuff that you get in the big cities and that, and you're almost transformed, aren't you?
Well, there's no question of that, Red. You're transformed, and you're looking forward to, you know, hopefully catching a fish sometime during the day, because I have done a little bit of fishing in other places, but not nearly where the fish were as plentiful as they are here. And you know, on your first cast, you hope, well, gee, you know, it'd be nice to catch one sometime this afternoon or sometime this morning.
George, I'll tell you something. I know guys that have spent lifetimes to try and catch this many speckled trout at one time. And as you say, we only fished the one day. This was fantastic water. It didn't take long.
Well, this is the country for people like myself to go fishing because, you know, if you're not a good fisherman, this is the place to go because you're going to catch all kinds of fish. You don't have to be a fisherman up there. They're just, you know, there must be hundreds or thousands in the river. I don't know how many to say, but there must be all kinds. And we caught, if you remember, we caught fish 2 and 3 pounds. You know, we caught a couple of pound and a half. We let those kind go.
Oh, yeah. Well, that one I got, which is about the third one from here, I'm keeping him. He's trophy size. He was about 5 pounds, the one big one.
Yes, I remember. He was, well...
I was screaming over
2
you
pounds
there.
for me was trophy size, Red. But the 5 pound one you've done a lot, I guess, and you've been around it.
I
some
never
great
caught
places.
speckled trout this fast, as many as we caught.
Well,
And we remember we thought this was a real good fishing hole.
Oh, I
This
thought
was
this
before
was
we ate,
This was
remember?
a big fishing hole, yes.
You released the little ones there.
Look at them going away. Poor little fella. Go and get your grandpa.
I remember that's real good. I got this one on and started to dance.
You danced every fish you caught,
That's
right?
when
It's
you
just
told
like...
me. That's when you told me the Indian in me was coming out because I was doing the war dance on those rocks. You know, those little fellas gave you, well, they weren't that little actually, but they gave you a tremendous fight in that fast water. You know, you had to handle them right too. You remember how many we lost before we realized to bring them out of that fast water?
You know, they're quick little fellas, you know, and they decide to go, and they're going with that fast water. I lost a couple of lures on them, and
That's
I
a
don't
good
know if they
sign.
were big ones or what. There was inexperienced, but a few of them got away. There's our guide,
Yeah,
Peter.
old
remember?
Peter.
Remember
Old Peter.
Yeah.
He couldn't resist. He had to grab a rod. You remember about the third
Yes,
fish? He
yes.
couldn't stand it.
It was pretty cold up there. Remember that, Red?
Oh, well, that time of the year, that's where just before the goose huntings, you know, when
The mosquitoes
Just the
must
end
have
of it.
antifreeze up there because they were out even though it was cold.
they never bothered me.
I was standing on a rock there. I didn't have very good waders, if you remember.
Waiters, you had water in your shoes. How not to go fishing? Oh, that didn't bother you, though. That was beautiful. This was the one that gave you that battle, and you were screaming and carrying on. You know, another thing I want to mention here, George, you'd have to travel all that distance to get into water that was that clear. That
You
was
don't-
really water, wasn't it?
You don't see water like that. There's very few people that see water like that. And,
Not anymore, not in the cities.
I guess if some of those Indians up in that country came down here and saw some of our water, they would die.
Yeah. Well, can you imagine now the people are, this is the first fishing hole that we went to where they dropped us off, and we caught one almost every cast.
Well, it's fantastic, man. Just fantastic. I couldn't say enough about the fishing hole. We had the little match on too. See
Well, I
who's gonna
never
get the
did
biggest
find out
one and
who
who's
won
gonna
it.
get the most.
I never did find out who
Got
won
too
that.
excited catching them after that.
Eh?
We forgot who was.
We had
Who
an
the
awful
winner
time.
was.
We had an awful time keeping the cameraman from grabbing a rod and reel.
Those
Now
are,
we're coming into
those are
the.
my three, aren't they, right?
Come off of it. Is that how you counted your goals all the way through?
No, they had other people keeping record.
Yeah, I wish they did up there.
Unfortunately for me.
But we're coming in after this next fish that we catch. I think this is where I got my trophy out of that. But it was out of there that I got it, wasn't it, George?
That's
The
where
big
we
one?
got the big one, yes.
Yeah, I think that's him there. Golly, he was beautiful. I had those white fins. Looked like a char almost, I thought it was. You know, I thought it was a char, a hook mouth.
Look at that, Red. Just like the first fish you ever caught in your life.
George, I've been fishing over 40 years, and every fish gives me a thrill like that. I just can't get it out of my system. Little, big, anything there. Of course, we had light tackle. We had real, what, was it, 6-pound line? And the light rods. What was the name of that little lure those guys gave us? What did they call
I've
that?
forgotten the name of it.
Man, that was lethal.
Forgotten.
I had that daredevil on there, the little red and black. You tried to steal
Well, they
one
bite
from
on
me.
almost anything up there, I think, don't they?
Yeah, here he is. Eat your heart out. You asked who paid the debt off. This one here. this guy here is the one. That was a fish. I want to have him mounted, you know.
Did you have him on it?
Well, I still got him frozen, but I'm going to take him up to Hawkins up in Winnipeg and have him mounted. Look at the look on your face. You're trying to act nonchalant.
That's a pike you got, isn't it, Red?
You sure? Well, he was a good one. And I'm gonna let you talk about this next part of the trip. I think this belongs to you because you made a mention up there, you ought to repeat now, about having traveled all over the continent playing hockey, eating in the best restaurants in the world. You remember that?
Oh, yes, yes. Well, we're going to have our lunch here.
Yeah, no, right after this.
Peter's about to clean them, is he not? The guide, he's about to clean the fish now, or?
No, this was my trophy, remember? We didn't touch him.
Yeah,
I put
we're
him
on our
in
way up
moss.
to
We're
lunch
on, he's had lunch on, see?
Yeah, we're on our way up.
That's right. And when we get back there, you tell the story to all our friends here of what you think about eating the shore lunch fish.
Well, first of all, I gotta say is that one thing you gotta say about the Indians up there is they don't make a big fire and make a big bonfire in order to burn a bush down all around it. The fellow just made a nice little fire, enough for his to cook the meal and to boil the tea, and there I am eating the trout. And I think that you can pay $100 any place in the world, and you can't get anything that tastes like a shore lunch of freshly caught speckled trout like they have there.
That was just the first half of the show, kids, but you know, the sponsors pay for this show. And at this point, we have to let them tell their message. And then I'm going to bring the other half when we got that whole mess of those beautiful speckled trout out of the Rogaan River in Quebec. So you people watch these few messages and then come back and join the Sea Scouts and I'll tell you the rest of the story about that crazy George Armstrong and I. I was just making another phony cast for these kids. For those of you who just came with us here at Cataraqui Lodge with these Sea Scouts, I was telling them the story of George Armstrong and I fishing in the Rogaan River up in northern Quebec along the Hudson Bay. And this is the part, kids, where we get to the rapids and really start catching the speckled trout. Ever you kids ever catch speckled trout? They're the most fightingest fish for their size, I guess, that's on the face of the earth. And if you don't believe me, just stand by and watch the rest of the story as George and I told it, and you folks too. Stand by and watch the way these speckled trout fought and what terrific fun we had catching it.
Well, here we are, boy. We were walking through that and just at the top of the rapids. That was a beautiful scene, watching that rapid start down there.
It looks so calm at the beginning, you know, and then it just gets rough, and that'll be a pretty good shot in the canoe, I'll tell you.
I'll put it this way, George. It didn't look like those Canadians coming at you on a playoff game.
No, well, you can't catch them so easily, I'll tell you.
Well, and you know what? What amazed me is when we flew over all these waters, we must have passed 30 rapids like this, and he said every one of them up there in that, northern Quebec has full of brook trout like this, or speckles, I mean.
The thing that I found strange about the whole thing is, like in the still waters, they catch lake trout, and only in the rapids they catch speckled trout.
Well, we could have gone for pickerel and pike, but all you wanted was speckled trout, and that's all I wanted because you can't get them in very few places like this.
First cast. Here we go. First cast.
Yeah, that's the one that made a believer out of you. When you yelled, I think we hit the jackpot.
I don't think you even had a lure on your line yet.
Yeah, I just made the cast as he struck. Remember, you were just lifting them up, and I had mine on. These were bigger, actually. They ran a little bigger than in that other hole, didn't they?
They were a little bit bigger, I think, yes.
There I am. I had mine on there. There goes the war dance.
It was something, wasn't it something like the first 5 casts or 6 casts we had now? I've just forgotten.
12.
First
every
12
cast, first
every
12 casts. We lost a few in the fast water, but every cast one hit.
All about 2.5, 3 pounds. Just beautiful fish. Just beautiful.
When that sun came out, they just sparkled almost like diamonds, fighting in that small water.
Takes a little while to bring them in, too, especially with the light tackle. Takes a little while.
Yeah, that's when I got ahead of you. You had the time getting the hook out of you. I'm out there, and I made a cast and got another one. Did we ever pay off that bet, come to think of it?
No, I don't think you ever paid me, Red.
Well, I'll tell you the plan.
Because,
I'll tell you.
yeah, I know you're about to say that you were the winner, but I think I was the winner, and I don't think you ever paid me.
Well, you ate your big one. I still got mine to prove it. Say, old Pete could really fillet those things fast, couldn't he? Gee.
Just like Bobby Hall going in and goal. He knew what he was doing, I'll tell you that much.
Oh, well, isn't that beautiful? Some of you fishermen that are watching this show, all I could say is you just have to look at it and eat your hearts out, because those speckled trout up there were something. And mind you, this is all one day. This is just a one-day fishing trip that you're watching here.
Well, I guess an avid fisherman would just go nuts up there, wouldn't he?
Well, yeah, he'd
just
release a
about
lot
go
of them.
crazy, though, because of the fish which they catch.
He'd release a lot of them.
Here we go again. Another one.
If you think you didn't like this, wait till they show the close-up of you.
I guess very little has to be said about how I enjoyed it, Red. When they show my face, that speaks for itself.
Well, I have to admit, that's an improvement.
Not another one, I said.
Well, about all I can say is anytime you want to bow back, give me 5 minutes, because I'll need a lot of time to pack.
It won't take too long.
There's a beautiful fish. Did you get to eat some of those you took home,
Oh, yes.
George?
My whole family, they just enjoyed them. My mother
They
and
were
dad,
really
they had some
something.
as well, and it wasn't nearly as good as eating them on the shore. I have to admit that, but
no. Well, I'll
they were
tell
still
you,
great fish.
I think it's maybe with the waterfall rushing down there and the birds and everything being out there in that
I
country
think
that's not spoiled yet, you know.
it's
it
the
was
unpolluted
untouched.
air and
Oh,
unpolluted
that
water,
was
maybe
something.
whatever it is, but it sure is great.
What were you
fish.
saying? It was going to take you a week of city living to get your lungs back to normal? Hey, you know, you took that really seriously, didn't you?
That's serious talk, man.
Answer me truthfully. Would you go back if you had the chance? Try
Well,
me.
you just have to ask me once. I don't think you have to ask me twice. I'd be up there very quickly.
I tell you, everybody ought to try that area up there. And that's a good idea, having that whole lodge run by the Indians, making them independent merchants. And
Well, I think it's great, and the Indians, that's their country up there, and they're the only people who really know how to live up there, because I think that you and I would have difficulty surviving there.
speak for yourself,
Well,
Don.
I think you'd have difficulty surviving there.
I
too,
could
but,
get along real good in that country.
But it's wild.
I imagine you'd get tired of a shore lunch every day of your life, but...
Well, try me, you know. Try me.
You know, here you come. Now you learned how to operate on them. That's right. Did a good job.
Fished for 4 hours, and then he let me take the hook out the next time.
Yeah. Yeah, you learn fast.
Yeah, it only took me 4 hours to get the hook out of that fella.
Well,
That's
this is-
not me with the knife, though, right?
Yeah, no, that's Peter. But this is the part of the show that I want to have every fisherman look at. We didn't have our limit. I forget what the limit was up there. Was it 10? 10
I think
a
it was
day.
10 a day or something.
10 a day. But
We only fished for an hour.
every
and a half
one of
here.
these fish came home. Every one was cooked, and every one was savored. Probably to the end of our lifetime, we'll remember that trip. But isn't that a beautiful catch of speckled trout for one day's fishing?
Well, that's less than 1 day. That's a few hours, right?
Yeah, actually it
That's a
was.
few hours.
Actually it was. Armstrong, I was proud of you. Started to hate to have this part come, didn't you?
Yeah, you hate to go, don't you? Hate to go.
Well, now we got something to look forward to again. You were talking
Well, it's
about
hard to
Bauer.
beat,
I'd like to get Bauer up there with you sometime. You said he's goofy when he catches fish. He'd go out of his cotton
he's,
picking mind up there, wouldn't
he
he?
just loves fishing.
Huh?
Well, that's the story. How'd you kids like it?
Great!
I should have had, I should have had Johnny Bauer along too, because he's just as crazy as Armstrong. I got another story I'm going to tell the scout troop somewhere about that one too. And I hope you folks enjoyed it. That was one of the best speckled trout tricks I was ever on. And I'm telling you, that even the cameraman, the director, everybody was catching them. Too bad you kids weren't along. Well, anyway, I got to tell you about the part of the cameraman and the director, but I've got to tell it to you right after my sponsor gives you his messages. You watch his messages and then come back and I'll tell you what happened on that trip after we were all through.